Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm your host Ruby, and this is Strange Minds 6. I hope you guys are liking the videos so far, and also something new that I've added. It's on a playlist, but it's the gameplays that I've been doing for Hogwarts Legacy. I've just been pretty much playing through that, and I hope that you guys are having fun with it as well, and enjoying it. But let's get into reading the Book of the Bizarre, Freaky Facts and Strange Stories by Varla Ventura. The Warning. Toad by Denise Murphy Burke. Several years ago, I organized a Northwestern University reunion for my sorority sisters. We were all to stay at a sister's home in Santa Rosa, California. A group of about 20 of us were able to come, some from as far away as New York. I was immensely excited about the reunion, and especially looking forward to the arrival of my best buddy, Barbara, from Ohio. The afternoon prior to her arrival, I received a long-distance phone call from her. She said, "My suitcase is packed, and my ticket is in my hand, but I just don't think I can come." It seems her son had called and begged her not to go. He had had a very powerful dream in which she was in a fatal accident at the reunion. My friend said that based on that alone, she would have to change her plans. But her son had confessed to her that he had also had a similar dream 3 years before, that his father would die very suddenly. 5 days after that dream, his father died while taking a shower. His father was only 48 years old. The son felt somehow responsible for his dad's death, and due to his guilt, had never shared the dream with his mom. But now, he was desperate to convince her to stay home, and she did. Even though Barbara wasn't with us, the first day was incredible. The plan for the second day was to take a horse-drawn, open wagon ride through the vineyard countryside. That morning, 9 of us climbed up on the first carriage as the driver was hoisting his large body into the driver's seat. Suddenly, 2 horses mistook a loud sound for a signal to go. They lurched forward, throwing the driver on the ground. With no one to keep them in check, we were soon going at a full gallop. I reached up to the driver's seat and pulled back on the large wooden lever, which seemed like it should be the brake. The lever did nothing to slow the wagon, but I held on to it for dear life. The others threatened to jump, but I begged them to hold on tight. We were racing out of control, and all of a sudden we realized the freeway was straight ahead of us. The horses were heading right for it, but as the horses approached the freeway, they took a sudden 90-degree turn on 2 wheels onto a frontage road at full speed. The horses headed directly for one of the telephone poles that lined the road. The pole ended up going right between the horses, smashing the yoke and freeing them. Everyone but I was violently flung out of the carriage. Women lay strewn on the ground like rag dolls. No one sustained serious injuries, but when the police arrived and asked me the names of the others, I couldn't answer. I just kept wondering what would have happened to Barbara if she had gone with us. I think that a deep connection between mother and son saved her life. Yeah, I believe that. Sometimes you can have dreams, and honestly, that could be a warning for the future of what's to come, and it's pretty much letting you know, hey, be careful. The next story, Night of Terror, told by Joan Warfield. My throat ached with an excruciating pounding. It was my heart. It was so loud that I was sure I would be detected in my third hiding place in the shed. Who was this madman stalking me with a gun? What did he want from me? Finally, catching my breath, I braved a peek around the corner of my shelter and decided to run for cover in the main house. I dashed through the clearing, toward the house, slipped in through a side door, and slid the lock shut as quietly as possible. I leaned back against the wall and slid down into a heap. Just as my heart began to slow down a bit, I heard a wild screeching of tires in the driveway. I rolled onto my knees and looked out the bottom of the window through a tear in the curtain. I could see the maniac in the driver's seat, headed straight for the house at full speed. I leapt on my feet and ran out the back door, towards the orchard. In a flash, I heard the car behind me. I turned the corner of the house, and the wheels screeching after me. My God, I thought, this was it. I was going to die. Then I bolted upright in bed, stricken with terror. My heart was thundering in my chest and throat. It took me several minutes to realize that I was actually home and experiencing a nightmare. The fear lingered. I was so shaken up by the experience that I made myself get up and walk around to stay awake. I turned on music and sang out loud to dispel the mood so there would be no chance of re-entering what was a very real, frightening place. I knew this was no ordinary dream. It was 2 a.m., so I had some tea, and after an hour or so, somehow managed to get back to sleep. 2 days later, I was speaking with my mother, who lived several states away. She related to me a horrifying story about how she and my sister had been chased into hiding by my sister's crazy husband, who had threatened to shoot them. They frantically tried to find a place to hide. They hid in the shed, then in one of the cars, where they slept all night. They were truly terrified for their lives. The incident, it had happened at 2 a.m. on the very night of my own nightmare. Psychic Madame. No one can claim that Madame de Fermium wasn't psychic. In 1896, the German medium had a premonition, which was published in the local papers, of a disastrous collapse of a coal mine in Dux, Bohemia. The following year, an accident in the exact mine killed hundreds of people. Both William Shakespeare and Miguel de Cervantes, who was considered by some to be Shakespeare's literary equivalent, died on the same day, April 23rd, 1616. In 1958, a Kansas tornado ripped a woman out of her house and deposited her unharmed 60 feet away next to an LP of the song Stormy Weather. Psychic Wife. The wife of Ulysses S. Grant woke on April 14th, 1865, with the intense sense that she and her husband should get out of Washington, D.C. as soon as possible. They left that day, even though it meant standing up President Abraham Lincoln's invitation to the theater. That's why Grant was not killed by John Wilkes Booth that evening when the actor assassinated the president. Booth's papers later revealed that Grant was on his hit list. Excuse me. Listen to your dreams. Countess Tauchkov was the wife of a Russian general at the time of Napoleon invading Moscow. During that time, she woke up from a dream in which her father had come to her room with her young son and said that her husband had been killed at Borodino. The next 2 nights, she had the same dream. Finally, she told her husband about it, and they looked at a map, but could find no such town. Later that same year, her father came into her room early one morning, holding her son's hand, and saying that her husband had indeed been killed at Borodino, a small town outside of Moscow. Wow. First Impressions, told by Anne B. Ejoy. Once my daughter and I went to the airport in Charleston, South Carolina, to pick up a woman and her son from South Africa. We had never seen her before, and I was not enthusiastic to be seeing her at this time. She was a woman that my husband had met on one of his trips. She had entertained him, and he had invited her to visit us if she ever came to America. She was not difficult to recognize. She had the audacity to arrive wearing a khaki suit and pith helmet, and she walked about our little airport as though on a safari. When she marched into our living room, she stopped dead in her tracks, gasped, and shouted for her son to come immediately. He found her standing in front of a painting that my daughter and I had bought in a small village in southern France. He could not believe his eyes. He said, "This is the painting that my mother and I fell in love with in a small village in southern France, but because our funds were low, we had lunch to think about it before making a decision. When we returned to buy the painting, we were told that it had just been sold to an American woman and her daughter. They had settled for a lesser painting by the same artist, and they just happened to have a photograph showing the painting hanging in their living room in South Africa. Of course, new friendships were cemented on that spot. Maybe he had a point. An agoraphobic man who had vowed never to leave the house again after he was assaulted at age 18 decided, after 30 years of self-induced imprisonment, to take a walk outside. But the strain of being out was too much for him. He suffered a heart attack while strolling along. Sheesh. One hearty book. One hearty book. When British actor Anthony Hopkins signed up to play a leading role in the film The Girl from Petrova, sorry if I mispronounced that, based on a book by George Pfeiffer, he traveled to London to pick up a copy of the book for research. Although he visited many bookshops, he was unable to find a copy of the book anywhere. Waiting for a train at an underground station, Hopkins noticed a book sitting on a bench near him, apparently discarded. When he went to see what it was, he was amazed that it was the same book he was looking for. As if this wasn't enough, years later, while shooting the film, Hopkins was introduced to the book's author. The two men discussed the film and the book it was based on, and Pfeiffer offhandedly mentioned that he didn't own a copy of the book himself anymore. He lent it to a friend who had lost it somewhere in London. Hopkins, incredulous, produced his found copy of the book, the margins of which were covered with the original owner's notes, made with Pfeiffer's own hands. And that, my dear friends, is where we're going to leave it for today. I thank you for tuning in, and I would greatly appreciate it if you please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share with your friends. And until then, this is Ruby, signing off.